Hello and welcome to the Conversation Podcast with your host Nadine Matheson. If this is your first time joining us, allow me to reintroduce myself. I'm Nadine Matheson, best-selling author of the Inspector Angelica Henley series. See the poster over there? That's the first book in the series, The Jigsaw Man. The fourth book in the series, The Shadow Carver, is available for you to pre-order now. It's out on the 12th of February in the UK and the 10th of March in the US and Canada. Links, as always, are in the show notes. As well as being a best-selling author, I'm also a former lawyer and the host of the fantastic The Conversation with Nadine Matheson podcast, where every week I have amazing conversations with fantastic guests about their books, their publishing journeys. We ask questions about storytelling. What else? The famous 5 questions at the end, whether they're introverts or extroverts and the challenges in their life, whether they were good or bad. And that is the Conversation Podcast. And if you enjoy the podcast, if you've listened to previous episodes or watched previous episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe because the algorithm likes that. I cannot explain the algorithm to you. All I know is that if you like it and share and subscribe, well, more people will find us. Anyway, let's get on with the show. Today, I'm in conversation with journalist and author Ali Harris, whose new novel, This Wasn't Meant to Happen, is out now. And our conversation, we talk a lot about grief, authenticity in storytelling, and how what we've gone through personally, how we use that to influence our writing, and how sometimes, as I say, the message isn't always for us, it's for the people reading and for them to learn through the stories that we tell. And we also talk about rejection, and there's a conversation about themed restaurants. Believe me, it will all make sense. Now, as I like to say, if you're listening to me and not watching, now sit back, we'll go for a walk and enjoy the conversation. Okay, so Ali Harris, welcome to the conversation.
Hi Nadine, lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. I just feel like I need to, if Ali and I suddenly just break out into laughter, because we were chatting and laughing for a good 5 to 10 minutes before we even officially press record. About nothing to do with what
Serious
we're going to
now,
talk today.
yeah.
We're going to get serious.
Yeah.
So my first question for you, Ali, before your first book was published, who was Ali Harris? Way back when?
Oh wow, an absolute dreamer. I grew up sort of wanting to be an actress, loved musicals, and just books and musicals were basically my obsession. And did performing arts at university, but spent a lot of time writing while I was there as well. Whilst everyone else was off doing performances, I'd choose the 10,000 word essay and always have my head in a book. So I think the kind of writing was literally on the wall in terms of where my sort of dreams lay. And I left university, and then in true tradition of anyone that's ever done drama or performing arts at university, I began waitressing. And spent, quite a lot longer waitressing than I had anticipated, in various different crazy restaurants, theme restaurants. It was all very one day. When I read that book, when a few years later, and she, in it, Emma is working in a theme restaurant in Kilburn, and I had been working in a theme restaurant in Leicester Square. And she wanted to be an author, and I wanted to be an author. It felt like quite synonymous reading that book. So when I was waitressing, it was sort of at the beginning of this sort of new wave of women writers. Bridget Jones had come out. Yes, I'm that old. And, Ralph's Party by Lisa Jewell and Adele Parks and all these kind of incredible female voices that were sort of breaking through, and were, I think, inspiring so many of us to realise that we had stories to tell in a way that hadn't been told before, sort of new modern voices that were, and there was a real place on the shelves for female born fiction, women writing for women about women's lives. So during my sort of waitressing days, I was the girl that was kind of up at 7 a.m. every morning, writing all day, and then going and serving tables all night, sort of dreaming of a book deal. And that was sort of my dream and a passion pretty much from when I was about, 19, 20 years old. And it took a while to get there. I ended up going into magazines, because I had written a book, taking it around to loads of agents. It had got rejected. I was like 22 years old. I'd sort of imagined that I was going to leave my waitressing job on the wave of this gigantic book deal. That did not happen. But I also knew that it was something that I had to work towards. That's the dog.
That's fine.
No. Oh my God, I knew that would happen. So yeah. So I remember bawling when the final rejection came through from an agent, and I had got close with 2 or 3. And then it was kind of like, no, this isn't quite what we're looking for right now. I remember just bawling my eyes out to my sister and her saying to me, Ali, you love writing. You love fashion, you love all that. You've always read magazines. What about, trying to get a job as a writer?
Yeah.
And so, that's what I did. I ended up working in the sort of women's magazine glossy industry, which I absolutely fell in love with from the moment I was with in it, but never lost sight of this dream of being an author. I sort of went into that industry knowing that I only ever wanted to be a writer. I didn't want to be a features editor or an editor, or I wanted to learn the craft of writing to deadlines, writing stories in a different way other than fiction. And that was my path, really. Ended up working for Company magazine and Elle magazine and Glamour, and had my own column, about, it was sort of all very Sex and the City, which I absolutely loved, but was always writing books. In the background. It was kind of the thing that was always there. And it was just like I was biding my time and waiting for the right story and the right moment for that to happen, really.
I always feel, and I've said it before, that you kind of need that. I call it delusional optimism. Like, you need that delusional optimism in the beginning.
I've lived my life with delusional optimism. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it pays to have those big dreams. I absolutely believe that, and I knew that from a really young age. I remember when I left, university wanting to be an actress, those years were really hard. And I was, I genuinely waitress from the age of about 20 to 25, when all of my friends were getting, on the career ladder, incredible jobs, company cars, this, that, and the other. And I remember back then going, that is not for me. I know what I want. And if I end up in a job where I'm comfortable and I'm on a good salary and I don't come back from work crying, which I often did after a waitressing stint, then I'm never going to keep reaching for that dream. And that determination and that kind of vision absolutely, I think was the key. Just knowing that if I settled for anything else, then I might never do that. And I think, I'm someone that follows my heart absolutely, and needed that as my goal.
I remember I was working at the BBC, and it sounds glamorous, but I was doing what they call it, talent rights group. So we're selling on making sure the copyright, which seems quite apt now, making sure the copyright was in place before we sold programs off over to foreign territories. And I just remember walking into the office one day, and it was a massive open plan office, and just looking around, I was like, no, I can't be doing this.
Can't do this
every single day.
Yeah.
Like, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, so I was gonna be a lawyer. That was gonna happen. But also the writing thing was always there, and I'd be sitting there in my lunch hour, just writing these little chapters. I didn't know where it was gonna go, but there's something there.
Yeah, I would always go off at lunchtime and take my laptop to a Starbucks or a coffee shop or something. I remember at Glamour, I was writing a book and would just sort of tootle off all the time. So I was sort of never, around to kind of go out on the girls' lunches and that kind of thing, because that drive was always there. And I think that's kind of what I think that's what a lot of creatives have, is this sort of urge to not let go of something. And you need that desire and that passion and that willingness to keep going, even when you've had loads of rejections, which I did in those early years. It wasn't like I wasn't submitting stuff. I was submitting stuff, trying to get an agent, then it didn't happen. And then I had a period when I was so happy in magazines. I was so, I felt like I'd found my calling for that period of my life, where I knew that the books could come, but I was sort of having really great life experiences and sort of, interviewing celebrities and having, learning how to write for an audience, learning how to hook people in with a feature, learning how to, connect with people on an emotional level, or or an educational level, to kind of, to help them understand something more. We dealt with loads of brilliant themes on, particularly when I worked on Company magazine, we were writing really big stories about women's safety and about, and it just felt really important and exactly what I should be doing at that time.
Yeah.
And that perhaps, it would give me the basis from which to write books in the future. Because I think prior to that, I hadn't really had the life experience, and actually, as a journalist, you have the privilege of listening to other people's stories all the time, and that feels like such an insight, and I think that is what is such a great route into why so many journalists become writers as well, because it's just, you listen and you find empathy, but you present, stories in a way that is going to connect with your readers. So it sort of really, really taught me valuable lessons, but then also gave me connections. At the same time, I was very clear that if I was working in magazines, then maybe there'd be a way that I could do book reviews, and maybe there'd be a way that I could interview authors, and that's what I did. And would always be like, so how did you get a book deal? And I'm writing a book. And, I'd always like sneak that in at the end. Oh yeah, like you got to use what you can.
Because I think like there's no experience that's wasted, whether it's a personal experience or a work experience. Because I think similar to you, I never did waitressing. I just knew I didn't have the. I'm trying to find a polite way. I didn't have the personality that suited. I did not have the patience to sit waitress at all. Like my mum and dad had a restaurant in Grenada, and I'm like, I will do the bar. I can handle the bar.
Yeah.
Me, no. Yeah. I would I would not do it. Yeah. But I did every supermarket. I did the supermarkets. So I did Tesco's.
Oh, okay.
Safeway. I worked in Safeway for ages until I found like my dream part-time job of working in the bookshop. So I was working in books, etc. And I worked
where in London?
I was in Canary Wharf.
Oh, I love books, etc. The one on Oxford Street. I spent hours in there.
It was the best. And the best thing, they'd let you go to different branches. So like when I was on holiday, it's like, oh, where do you need help today? It's like, can you go Oxford Street? Can you go Charing Cross? Can you go Smith? So it was really, really good. But I think all of them,
like that was the first bookshop that kind of put a cafe in a bookshop. I mean, I might be wrong.
I think it was. No, I think it was
like I remember it opening this amazing like 3-4 story building or whatever.
Oh, and that was Street. Borders. When they turned into Borders, they had the big cafe on
No, I'm sure books. Was it Borders?
I did it first, but I know it changed into Borders. I think just when
I'm sure they had a cafe there.
But,
anyway, no, but just geek out over bookshops.
No,
obviously.
It was the best. It was absolutely the best. But then, even in becoming a lawyer later on, spending many years as a solicitor. But I think similar to being journalism, it's all about you're learning to see people, if that makes sense, and see their personalities and see their different makes up, what motivates them, and it's a continuous journey and a continuous learning experience. And so I say for us as lawyers and for us as for you as journalists, you're always constantly telling stories, thinking what's the best way in order for me to present this to whether it's to a judge or to the jury,
and translating information, like in a way that is digestible to people, whether that's information that's deeply personal or deeply emotional or deeply scientific or deeply complicated, to any of those jobs that people then come to being an author and are able to just know how to translate that information in a way that makes people want to read and know more. Those jobs are really invaluable. And I absolutely, if you told my 21-year-old self that I needed to have a decade of life experience in another career before I could write a book, I just would have bawled my eyes out and cried and gone, but I want it now. I'm meant to be an author,
I know it feels though, isn't it? You want it now. It's like
you want it now.
Wait 10 years. Like, what? Why?
Yeah. But it absolutely informed everything that I did. And actually, when it came to my very first book, Miracle on Regent Street, the job that I'd had in Selfridges the years before, because I always did retail as well before waitressing. I worked in retail and I was working in Selfridges as a Saturday girl when I came out of university, and then doing waitressing. And I sort of used that experience of working in a department store in London to write the very first book, even though it was a decade later when I wrote it. So yeah, it's really interesting how that experience kind of filters through later on.
And I said it goes back, and also always ask questions. So the same way when you're doing your
Yeah.
interviews as a journalist, like, how did you get your book deal?
Yeah.
It's weird with lawyers, a lot of them become writers. And I remember
Yes.
when I qualified, and my first firm I worked in as a newly qualified solicitor, one of the senior solicitors, she was an author. She wrote crime fiction, and she had her book. And I think at the time I probably didn't think I could do both. And then you realize, actually, no, you can do both. And there's people who are exactly like you who have achieved it and have done it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you write your first book?
I laugh because my first book, it's somewhere in this room on this computer. Who knows where it is? But I started writing it. So when I was in the BBC, so this must have been like 2003. But it took me ages to finish it. And then I must have I know I finished it when I qualified, so I must have finished it around 2006. So it took me about 3 years. And then I did what everyone does. You think it's brilliant. You think it's the first draft. It's brilliant. How could anyone possibly say no to this? No one's going to say no to this marvelous work. And of course, I'm going to get the agent, and I'm going to get the book deal, and then I'm going to have my name in lights, and lifestyle rich and famous. It did not happen, Ali.
Yeah.
The rejections just keep coming.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, you look really surprised. They keep coming and coming. But even though I say that's why I call it delusional optimism, they keep coming. I thought, well, I'll just send it out again.
Yes.
I'll just send it out again.
Yeah.
I'll just send it out again. And then it got
that's
to a
the beauty
point.
of youth as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like you don't hear the no. You just hear well, if you say no, well, someone else will take it. Like you don't know anything. Like I know better. And then I think because I was then, it's just work. And with my career, it's just, I say doing this, it's going up, I'm doing well, and it becomes my focus. And the writing just becomes like it's like my hobby, my little side thing, like it dipping in and out of until I think I always get date right, about 2013. Right. When I went freelance. Yeah. And then I had the time, I was like, no, I want to write. I really, really want to write. And then I wrote, so that would have been my second book I wrote. And I did it as part of NaNoWriMo, and I completed it. And then I thought, there's something here. Yeah. And then also the self-publishing thing was it was right in the middle of the self-publishing thing. I thought I'll just self-publish it and do it myself. And then that's what happened. That's how my first book.
I'm so in awe of that because I would never be able to do that. I don't have the capacity to do everything else that's required of you.
Oh, it's a lot.
You have to wear so many hats to self-publish, and I'm so in awe. And I'm so in awe of how it's grown as well. And I think it's incredible that authors get to truly own their authorship. And I wish that I knew that I had those skills, to be able to sort of, consider that as an option for myself. There has been a time when I thought I might have to, and it was literally like the thought of it, I was like, I'm going to have to pull up all these skills that I just don't have. And oh my God, and I would have done it and tried it. Absolutely. Because I think that the way that the publishing industry now, I think there is no set formula anymore. It is kind of literally everything is changing so rapidly in the creative industries that the sort of traditional publishing models are not the same as they were, a decade ago or 20 years ago. There are different routes and different ways in, and people are showing that constantly and innovating constantly with how you bring content, how you connect with people. And I do think publishing is sort of having to play catch up too with that. So I'm definitely in awe of anyone that's ever had a go at doing that. And I would certainly encourage it as well, because I think it's incredible.
I mean, what I will say, it will give you a very quick lesson in what you are good at and what you're not good at. I can write a book.
I already know.
I can write a book.
One job I can do, I can write.
One thing I can do, write a book. And I know I can find, I think I'm good at doing the finding. So I can find the cover artist, I can find the editor.
Yeah.
What I was not good at, or what I didn't have the time and I know my personality, the time and patience for, was the marketing side of it and how much work goes into the marketing side of it. And I was like, that is not, it's not for me. So if I was to do it again, I'll be like, I'm delegating as much as I can.
Yeah. I love all the creative stuff. So I love getting involved in the covers and everything like that. I feel like I I don't know if it is also the years in magazines and stuff that the whole creative package I love. The kind of marketing. I think it's because you're so close to it.
Yeah.
You sort of need people on the outside to be able to sort of work out how to place and how to connect. Although I definitely feel with my latest book that I have been able to do that much more than I've ever done before because it's so personal. And I sort of have wanted to put on lots of different hats for it too, because there's part of me that thinks that I'm the best person to talk about it, and I'm the best
tell the
person
story.
to exactly.
Yeah.
So
before I ask you about the book, once you became published, did it surprise you, the actual publishing world, even though you came from the world of journalism and you'd been, you're speaking to hopefully hundreds of authors, doing reviews, doing all of these things, but when you're actually in it on the other side, did it surprise you?
I think it was everything I wanted it to be. I think I was so blown away by the warmth of the industry, the joy of being an author amongst fellow authors, of how supportive everyone was, of the sort of the love and the warmth and everything that you gave each other. I was surprised by how difficult it was to create under deadline. Particularly for me, it happened at the same time as having children. So once I'd written Miracle, the second book, with a baby and a toddler, trying to write full time and be a mum full time, I found incredibly hard. And at the time, and it's probably still similar, I don't really know, because I've sort of been out of the game for a little while, the expectation was very much a book a year, and you produce, a book within 9 months, you deliver it, you start the next one, and then you're promoting the first one whilst trying to finish the next one, and then you're working out what your next book is, and you are just doing that sort of ad infinitum. That's the career, that's how you work. And I just couldn't work to those levels. I wasn't able to produce like that. My brain was exhausted and full with being a new mum, and needed the space and the time to work my way through stories and work out what I wanted to write and how I wanted to write it. And I think it surprised me how much pressure there was to sort of become a brand and deliver to that brand every single year. Because you would just presume that there would just be more freedom around the creativity to produce the best that you can produce rather than the fastest that you can produce. So I definitely struggled with that.
Yeah, I always say, it's an easy answer to say you just need to steal time, but it's hard to steal time to write when you have a life, you have a full life.
Yeah.
If you got children, family, work,
full-time job.
You get taken ill, all of these things. So, the easy answer is still time when you're traveling, but even finding those small pockets of time to write.
And I think I was under the illusion that I don't think this is true or the case anymore, that when I didn't have a job, or, that when I had all the time in the world to write, I would be able to produce so much and would be able to write so much. And actually, I found the opposite was true. Probably my most prolific time was when those babies were younger and I had 45 minutes, because my first child only ever napped for 45 minutes. And I would, be with him entirely. And then as soon as he was down, that 45 minutes was, and now I write. And it was hyper-focused. And I remember at that time sort of thinking, oh my God, I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to have from 9 till 3 and how much I would be able to produce. But actually, it's amazing how fast that school day goes and how little you get done. And actually, there's so many writers that I've spoken to since who work by the Pomodoro method, which is that kind of 5 lots of 25 minutes at a time, because it's so easy to put things off, get the jobs around the house done, clearing up breakfast, putting on a load of washing, doing this, I think everyone understood suddenly what it was actually like to work from home during COVID. And I had struggled with that for quite a few years before that, because no one, prior to COVID, I think people thought you were at home and you had all this time and, you could, and it was like, no, that,
there are things being done.
Home is demanding, children are demanding, admin is demanding, feeding everyone is demanding. And then you're trying to be creative on top of that, and find space for that, as well as just, delivering each day on every level for people. That's hard.
Yeah.
And I'm in awe of people that can kind of compartmentalize and do it. But I think everyone is different as well. And it was just something that I struggled with because, we had, I think my generation certainly was sold this, you can do it all
Yeah.
the time. And so I was very much under the impression that I should be able to do that I could, have my children 2 years apart and deliver a book a year and run a house and, be the most full-time present mum that I could be, because that's what everyone was doing. Or that's what everyone said they were doing.
That's what it looks like they were doing. And sometimes it can look like that on social media. It looks like everyone is, they have it all and they're managing it all, and really behind the scenes. Like I've often said, on this little profile image of us, it's absolutely perfect. You don't need to know what's on the other side of the room.
No.
It's going to be complete chaos.
We were talking about that before we
were talking about the chaos. But it's funny, I was talking about having it all and finding time. Like I didn't used to dismiss writing sprints until I realized you can actually get a lot done in an hour of writing. If you say, I've just got this 1 hour of writing and I'm gonna write, you can get a lot done. But then I was also thinking, because yesterday I saw a clip of Elizabeth Gilbert talking to Oprah, and she was talking about when she became rich after writing Eat, Pray, Love, and she didn't know how to. She didn't feel like she deserved the money. She always thought that she would be a starving artist. And it was the starving artist that kind of like, I'm not saying it irritated me, because I'm like, why should you want to be a starving artist? But also, how can you work to your best if you're starving? How can you produce your good work if you're constantly thinking about, I need food, I need to pay the bills, I need to do this, I need to do that?
Yeah, her version of starving clearly was not, her version was a sort of, I imagine, this sort of character in her head that was like, in a turret writing with a fountain pen and, doing not the reality of people who are actually starving, So it's one of those, I imagine, very flippant things that is said, and she sort of, But I guess it's sort of similar in any creative industry or the music industry when, it's that tricky second album or whatever, when you big, hit album and then you have to deliver something else and you think, have I said everything that I wanted to say in that first? And maybe that's what it was that she felt that the struggle had driven her to write, and without that struggle, how was she meant to write anymore? If you are surrounded, if you don't, because writing comes from the depths, writing comes from dark places, as and from personal struggles, and perhaps that's what she felt, that she just needed, to suddenly be so privileged. How do you produce work that can connect with people emotionally when you're writing from such a place of privilege?
It's a weird thing when you think about, like the early days when you go back to, I just want to write and I just want to have my book published, and just to be on the shelves is enough. And we don't know which way our careers are going to go. And it must be a bit of I was going to swear.
Go ahead.
It's going to be a bit of a head fuck if all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, my star is now completely stratospheric, when really I was just managing. I just would have been happy to see my book on the shelf.
I can't imagine the star ascending badly. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be lovely. I'm talking about it. I wouldn't say no to it.
No.
I'll take it. So I'm going to
But
ask
I
you.
also think there's another side to that. And I think as well, like I have actually always said that I think I would have struggled had something like that happened to me, because I look at someone like Jojo Moyes, who I absolutely love and absolutely deserves every bit of her success, and I couldn't have coped with something like that. I just don't think I would have been able to, write anymore after writing a book like Me Before You. I'd have just been like, I'm done.
I'm done now.
Thank you. Where do I go now? And to keep producing and keep producing such beautiful work, and and to be so admired and critically acclaimed and loved by an audience, that takes a lot of energy and a lot of a lot of creative output. And I'm not that person that can just keep producing like that. I need space around to support me. I think my mental health would have suffered hugely. It was hard enough in the period where I did have 2 book deals close together and knew that I had to produce 4 books close together. I really struggled. And I wasn't at Jojo Moyes level. It was because once you are published, I think this is the other surprise, is that suddenly you're not this person in a room just writing for yourself anymore. You're aware that, you've had reviews, and you've had good reviews and bad reviews. So you've sort of had people that have pulled apart your work that you've spent, all this time producing, and sort of, hopeful that you could, bring some joy or some light or some insight or whatever into someone's life. And then, it might get ripped apart by someone. And that's like a massive, curveball when that first happens. And you sort of have to learn how to navigate that. And then, to kind of, get to a point where I just always felt like I had to just keep it that I wanted to write. I still wanted to see those books on the shelves. And that was always my main focus. It wasn't about comparing myself to anybody else, because I didn't want to do that. I didn't see how that would benefit me in any way. I'm very good friends with my lovely Paige Toon, who is an incredible author and has produced many, many books every year and is wonderful. We've been friends for 15 years. She had quite a few books out when Miracle was coming out. We moved to the same area and our kids were the same age, so we would meet up weekly and became really, really good friends. And her writing journey is so different to mine, because she is that person that can write a book a year and she can do it all, and I adore her. But I knew I wasn't her, and I loved that we were so different and we have supported each other in different ways. But I absolutely knew that wasn't me, and that's okay.
Yeah, this job and this industry, you definitely learn about yourself and what you can do, and also what you really want, because what you may have wanted in the very beginning, which may have been your name in lights and a book out a year, and I don't know, TV adaptations, movie. You may have wanted all of that, but then you may be 2 or 3, and I think it's normally around that 2 or 3 book stage. You're like, actually, this is the career that I will be happy with.
To just be able to have the privilege of writing books that people read, and that's enough. That's what it boils down to, that's what it boils down to. And that's kind of where I am, because I can't that's
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll still do the Eat, Pray, Love thing. I'll still go to Italy for a year.
I think it's better when you're a bit older. That's what I'm going to say. That maybe I could handle it now. I'm sort of heading towards, I'm in the middle bit of my life. I reckon I could handle the money and, glory now in a way that I couldn't have done when I was like 30.
Now's a good time to do it.
Now's a good time.
Yeah. I'm saying mid to late 40s.
No, actually, I could cope with it now.
If I'd had this, if I'd had this when I was in my 20s, I don't think it would have. I don't think it would have gone well. No. I don't think I would have had a proper appreciation of it. Not that I need to appreciate the struggle, but I don't think I would have appreciated it or understood it or know what to do with it. Yeah. Now I think I would. Now, I mean, I'll try. Bring it on. I'll try.
Let's give it a go.
I'll see how it goes. Sally, and I was going to ask you about This Wasn't Meant to Happen. Well, actually, your latest book. And obviously it's dealing with like the loss of your baby 10 years ago. So my first question was,
it is, but it isn't. It is a fictional novel. So it's not about me or my baby. It's very much about these characters in this book. I wrote it because I had this experience of baby loss 10 years ago, where my baby girl was born 23 weeks and 5 days into my pregnancy, and it changed everything, changed my entire life and made me step back from my writing career. And within the years after that had happened, I obviously became part of a community that I had never dreamt I would be. I had 2 children before Poppy died, and I realised that these stories, this community, this experience that we all shared in whatever form or way that we had shared it, was so vast. The statistics were so high that 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage or stillbirth, and that this happens to so many women and to so many couples, and it just wasn't talked about. It just wasn't. A decade ago, the conversation has moved on a lot in the last decade, but 10 years ago, there really was very, very little. It was an echo chamber and this huge seismic experience that changed my life in a way that I couldn't have even fathomed, sent me on a journey of absolute grief and loss and devastation, but also on a path back to refinding myself and working out what I wanted and working out what life was about, and examining like relationships and what my values were and how to survive the unimaginable, and how when you are given this huge trauma and tragedy in your life, how you go on. And within that experience, I realised that the place that I'd always turned to for comfort, fiction, the place that I'd always turned to ever since I was a child to find a way to make sense of the world, to find a way to either, work out things that were happening in my life or find empathy for other people's journeys, I couldn't find this story there. And I looked and I looked and I looked and I couldn't find this, what I felt was a universal love story about infinite love and about how you learn how to parent a child who isn't here, and how it affects everything and everyone around you. And I thought, if we have memoirs, we have people's real life experiences, if you're going through this, then there were blogs that you could find, there are people that talk about their own experience. But for me, fiction is the place where you don't have to have had that experience to walk the path of the person that is going through it. And for me, it felt like by creating a story in fiction about a couple who experienced the stillbirth of their baby boy, and that happens at the very beginning of the book, and then you have the honour of going on this journey with them, I felt that it would somehow reach people who would then be able to support those who were going through it, but also make those people feel seen. So they didn't feel like I did 10 years ago when I looked for my story and I couldn't find it. And I felt even more invisible and even more silent and even more isolated as I did when it happened.
Yeah, I think it's so important for anyone reading like your book and others like it, is that whether the subject matter is, whether it is grief, that it's not seen as just a plot device, that it just feels as this is the story and we're going to start here, and whether it ends here, but this is the story and not just a plot device. So like the question I was going to ask you was that, when did you know that you was ready?
It took a long time. It was actually 4 years after she had died and a year after my little boy was born. So I did go on to have another baby. That had been my focus for a really long time, but also I knew that I couldn't write about it until I survived it myself and had lived through the grief to be able to write from a place of strength and I guess wisdom about what that journey was like. And I don't mean in that I'd got over it, because you never get over it, but survived it and found a way through it and found the beauty and the gratitude and the parts of the journey that often don't get talked about because people are so afraid of the grief. And I think particularly when it is something that is connected to babies and children, we do see stories of great pain, and we pick those stories up willingly when it is about a partner that dies but somehow the thought of a baby, understandably the thought of a child, of losing a child, is so something that people don't even want to imagine, that we steer clear from it. But then by doing that, this whole experience becomes shrouded in silence and shame, and we don't know how to talk about it. And I think fiction should teach us gently and guide us gently how to do that. And that's the biggest hope that I have for this book, is that those who choose to pick it up and know what it's about are doing so because they're going, right, I'm ready to be gently led through the story. And it is gently led because I knew that I could do that. I knew that I could guide you without throwing something unexpectedly, to the reader, that you were going to know what was going to happen to this couple from the first page. And I promise you will be held through it, and that there is not going to be, a surprise for a surprise sake, a plot twist for a plot twist, for plot twist's sake. you know, it's a story that begins with, you know, their son dying, and then how that baby changes their lives and changes everything around them forever for better, you know, and how they learn how to live without him. And that for me feels like, why wouldn't we want to read that? And why wouldn't we want to understand that all these couples who have this experience, they want to talk about their babies because their babies have changed them forever and they carry them with them forever. And that to me seems like one of the most important love stories of all.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many books I can think of where, though I'm saying those life experiences, those those life moments, those important and life-changing moments, they happen off the page, or they're just the
Yeah.
briefest of mentions, like someone
Yes.
says it in a
Yeah.
conversation in, I don't know, while someone's in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And you want to know more and you feel like it should be more, but it happens, and then the story just keeps moving by, and
Yeah.
it's like it never happened.
Yeah. And I've always loved books that deal with our big human experiences. You know, I mentioned Me Before You, earlier, and I know that, Jojo Moyes, struggled to kind of sell that book to publishers. Like, how do you sell a story about, someone who wants to end their own life? Like, that's not that's not,
Just say it's not a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, exactly. And nor is this book, and I'm fully aware of that. And I'm not comparing it to Me Before You for that, in that it will be this big bestseller. I know it won't, but what I hope it is the story that reaches the people who need it, and perhaps the people around them, and creates a conversation and a language with which to talk about big, deep human feelings of grief and loss, which we will all experience. And if we keep trying to turn our backs on them, if we keep trying to, push them into the shadows, then we will never know. And actually, on the cover of the book, there is, this kintsugi heart, which is, a broken heart that is filled, the cracks are filled with gold, because that to me is the journey. Your heart is absolutely broken, but along that journey, the knowledge that this baby has changed you forever, and that you carry this experience and this little being and this memory and this love forever, means that your heart is always going to be broken, but it is put back together with gold, and you are a better person for it, and you're a better human for it, and a better friend and a mother, and more grateful for the life that you have, and understand the fragility of life, and all these, huge things. And that, you want to talk, I want to show those cracks. I don't want to hide them. I want people to see them, and I'm happy to talk about them, and I'm happy to talk about my daughter and my experience, and I will always be happy to talk about her because she existed.
Yeah.
But she's not this story. This story had to be someone else's. It's Sophie and Rory's, because then it can be anyone's.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like, I suppose, I mean, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I suppose if it was a memoir, I don't know, some people might feel like they're invading your life. And this way it's open to everyone.
This is like an intimate kind of, the door, a door that is firmly shut during the grieving process of something like this, when all this stuff is going on behind closed doors and you're trying to survive something and no one sees that, and you just sort of re-emerge from the trauma and the shock and try and be as normal as possible to make everyone around you comfortable. And so then they don't ask you anything and you don't share anything, and you're this sort of husk that is pretending to be normal, and everyone is a bit anxious around you, and that makes you anxious and feel like you're making other people feel bad. And so then you want to hide away again. This gives you the honor of being able to see behind those closed doors, so you understand all those emotions and the complexity of this experience, and the gradual returning to sort of to life and to gratitude and to hope and to all the things that are on the side once you have gone through all that other stuff, which you have to go through. You can't avoid it. We know with grief that to avoid it is, at your peril, because it will come crashing back on you. And that it is a it is like a bravery and a courage that you find to go, I am going to force I'm going to make sure that I am not going to avoid this grief. I am going to go through it. And that's what it takes with this book as well, to have the courage to pick it up and go, I'm willing to do this because of how important it is for other people and could be for people around me.
Yeah.
And will perhaps give me the language with which to talk about grief to other people, because that is one of the biggest gifts that I have got from my experience of Poppy, is I now know how to talk to people about grief. And I am so grateful for that every day, because I get to have incredible, authentic conversations with people. I get to see their hearts and share mine. And so often we don't do that in life. So
No.
often we just, we're dealing with periphery, we're dealing with this facade and, the social media show, whatever else, oh, this is going on in my life. This is going, how are you? Oh, yeah, this is great. This is, but those moments when you have that big connection with someone and you have shared something deep and meaningful and talked about it and been there for someone when they're going through something, because you're not scared, because you have learned what to say, you have learned to show up and to keep showing up, and to know that if they are not responding to you, that's okay, and that you're not going to take offense to it, and that you're going to keep finding ways to tell them that you will be there for them whenever they are ready, and that they take all the time that they need, and that you are able to navigate that and then be that person for someone else when there were maybe people that couldn't be that for you. Like, what a privilege is that,
No. I'm saying, like, I'm so glad we're in this age now where these conversations are happening. When we was talking earlier about, being, I was saying, like, I think I was like 21. So when Lisa Jewell and Marion Keyes and Helen Fielding, and that era of women writers, and then when we move forward to now, like, we're having the conversations, I'm saying, about menopause and perimenopause and fertility, and for me about, fibroids and endometriosis, all those conversations are being had. So thankfully we're in an era now where we are able to have those conversations, and they can be in memoirs and other non-fiction books, or they are being written about in fiction, and the conversations are being had.
But we need both. I think that's my point. We need both, and I think
both.
It's felt like fiction has sometimes is a bit of catching up. It's, like you say, with menopause and perimenopause, that's only recently started
the last
happening.
5 years, I think it
And
seems to me.
I know that before that the conversation would have been like, no one wants to read about that, and that's and it is often those women's stories, the ones that are a bit messier and a bit more truthful, and that happen to all of us, that are sort of that are kind of swept under the carpet. And instead we're told that we have to, read the books about either the big careers or the big love story in the big moment when, we're saved by, a man or a job or a woman or whatever else. And actually what I want to read are the stories where we save ourselves.
Yeah. And also, I think it reflects back also when you think about how, I'm saying, the health services would deal with us. Like, for so many years, if you were going to the doctor talking about, well, I'm having painful periods, I'm having this, or, I'm having issues with fertility, it's like either it's all in your head, or or it's just like we'll just talk about it in the confines of this room, but don't really talk about it outside, because people won't understand, or they'll look at you strangely. It's all being kept like a dark secret.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you're told that you're wrong when it's something about your body.
God,
and it's kind of like, hang on, I know my body and I know what's going on, with this body. And you've got a certificate telling you you're a doctor, but you're not living in this body.
No.
And so, there's an awful lot of gaslighting that happens with women in every part of our life, throughout our lives. And I have a daughter. She's 14 years old, and I have great hope that, that the stage that we're at now, where we are so open and talk so openly about, the realities of life, and, I hope that it has changed enough and will continue to change, but we have to keep pushing, because we are still being told to get back in our box and to not, share those deeply messy stories. And I was absolutely told that with this book, by many publishers, that people didn't want to read a book about baby loss. And I had many, many rejections for this book.
Did you feel like it was a personal rejection, though, of you, when they were saying no, or could you recognise it was?
I felt like it was a rejection of the community and all the and of the collective story. I didn't need the book to be published. For me, it is not my story, and I had stepped away from the career of writing a decade ago when my daughter died, and I didn't know if I was ever going to write another book, because I didn't feel like I could write when I had to go through so much, that I couldn't lose myself in a fictional world. I had to just live the grief that I was living, survive it, bring up my children, ensure that I was going to be all right for them, and that I was going to be able to find a way to honour the version of a mother that I wanted to be, because I'd had Poppy and because she wasn't here. And so for me, that meant stepping away from fiction and living very much in reality. And so when I did start to write again, it was very much a choice to write this book because it was needed for other people. That wasn't me anymore, because I had found my way of dealing with my grief and dealing with my loss and reshaping my life around it. And it meant that I was writing something that I knew had been lacking for me. And so I was sort of writing it for myself the 4 years previously, but writing for any future version of someone like me who perhaps might have read a book like this a year before it happened to me, and that might have made me understand the journey more, or might have had this book on my bookshelf and could have passed it on to friends who were struggling to talk to me, or any, that's why I wrote it in the end. And I think so but I also wrote it knowing that it wasn't a commercial story. If you know that something isn't out there, then you're not under any illusion that it's going to be an easy journey to publication. So I certainly wasn't of the impression that this was going to be I was coming back to my book career with some book that was going to send me into the bestsellers, or, turn me into a, star author. No, not the intention. It's not the intention at all. This is a book that was written with a purpose. And that purpose was to serve, the community that I had found myself in, and also to reach beyond that community to the people who I feel, and I think that's everyone. I genuinely think that's everyone who should know this story, so that we can all talk about it and make sure that this conversation isn't just confined to an echo chamber anymore, and that we all learn how to talk about not just baby loss, but about grief. And we do that best when we see it in culture. Whether that's books or movies or songs, or I genuinely believe that art is the way that we get to walk these journeys that we are not necessarily going to walk ourselves. And that's a real privilege, isn't it?
I think that's why that question, what motivated you to write this book, it's never really sometimes a straightforward A to B answer, because your motivation to writing this book, it meant necessarily be for you to get over the grief, because you've done the work and you've come through it, but it's to give someone else the tools. And they may not even realize it at the times that they need the tools, but to give them the tools and show them an opening to work through their own grief, or the grief that their partner might be experiencing, or a family friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And grief is universal. We're all, no one's going to get through this life without it, but we like to pretend that we are.
You like to think you're untouchable, but really, I remember my cousin, and she was like, my sister died, so I think it's coming up to, time flies, I think 2 years, just over about 2.5 years. And I remember like the day after she died, and I think I might have said it to a friend or to my mum's, like, I didn't know you could cry in your sleep. Like, you could wake up crying. Like, the grief is not just a surface thing that you deal with between 9 to 5. It's constantly there.
Absolutely. And you feel it on every single layer of your being. It's, it was once described to me by a counsellor that you're basically like an onion, and she was describing it with the difference between men and women, actually, which is something that I explore in the book as well, with Rory and Sophie's grief, how different they are, but as a woman we feel things on every single layer. It touches every single part of us, when something like that, the loss of someone, and how it changes how you think about your identity, your career, your friendships, your relationship, your body, your future, everything. It touches on everything, and so you cannot escape it. You can't just go to work and switch it off. Which is why kind of there's been so much work towards like bereavement leave, and understanding that a week
is not enough.
How do you measure?
You can't.
How do you measure the life that is gone of someone that you love in a week? How do you put a time scale on it? How do you expect people to It's so strange.
It's a strange world we live in that someone could, I'm
This
just
is
saying,
how long
someone
you
could
need,
say,
and then you're done.
like you could take Monday off all the way through to Friday. I'll see you back next Monday because you'll be fine.
Another day
Get
off for
on.
funeral, and then back again.
I'll see you on Thursday.
Yeah.
Like,
it's crazy. It's crazy. And I was in a very privileged position that I obviously was writing books, and when this happened, I was able to say I'm taking a year off.
Yeah.
And choose to entirely step away. There are many, many people that have been in my position, are in my position, or have, and have to go back to work. And when they are suffering this deep, deep grief that has left them absolutely, without an anchor. And when your brain is consumed by it and you're meant to sit there and function, when the people around you in a workplace don't know how to talk to you at all.
But they don't have the
to
tools.
come back into that office. I can't. And so again, that's why, Sophie is not me, because Sophie does have a job that she goes back to and has to live through that experience of sitting amongst colleagues who are petrified of you because they think your grief is catching and they just want you to be invisible. And, and I know that that's what happened, and you just think, how is it to be in your skin when you're suffering this deep, when you've had a baby and then no one asks about your baby because to them that baby didn't exist, even though you gave birth to that baby like Sophie does. She has a stillbirth at 39 weeks, and then no one's going to ask you anything about that baby. And you're meant to just come back into this previous life that you had and function and make everyone around you feel comfortable because you don't want to be the person that's kind of disrupting the workplace. I mean, it's when you describe it and you try
crazy.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
And the same thing happens with illness as well.
Yeah.
Like people have suffered with cancer and they've come back to work after going through all, the chemotherapy and radiotherapy and then having to come back to work and people dealing with them like they're pariah, like it's contagious, or like, I don't know how to talk to you. Yeah. There's so many instances where people could relate to it.
Yeah. It's important. The big conversations are important, aren't they? And then,
it's probably why, conversations like this and reading your book, listening to other podcasts, it's important. It's important to do those things. Valerie, I'm going to ask you a question about the book.
Okay.
I always ask, if you could spend the afternoon with any of your characters, whom would you choose and why?
From this book or from any book? Oh, probably Nisha. Sophie's best friend.
It's never a main character.
It's never a main character.
Very rarely is it a main character.
I guess with this book particularly, having spent a long time kind of in Sophie's shoes, I don't know, many people would choose Sophie to be the person that they're going to, but Nisha I loved writing her. She's Sophie's best friend. They've been friends since they were, at school together. She has her own sort of complicated sort of relationship with motherhood. She desperately wants to be a mother, but life hasn't turned out that way for her. She hasn't met the right person. She's a doctor. She's incredibly intelligent. She comes from a family that sort of expects her to be married and to have children. So she has these sort of cultural expectations of her that she's sort of grappling with. But she is also very brave and courageous and kind of feisty and is carving her own path and is fiercely loyal and shows up for Sophie as much as she can and continues to learn along Sophie's journey and sort of grow as a character herself. So I just really loved writing her because she's flawed, as we all are. And I think it was really important to have someone that also showed Sophie that she's not the only person going through something, because you can be very selfish in grief as well. Yeah. And I was really aware of that when it was happening to me, that, it feels like the absolute worst thing in the world has happened to you, just to you, and that no one else could possibly imagine it. And you sort of lose sight of what other people could be going through at the same time. And the guilt and shame of that on top of, the silence and the isolation of grief is really hard. But it's important to have friends that can sort of pull you up by your bootstraps occasionally and remind you that, that there is some other stuff going on in the world, and that perhaps, that you know, that there are ways of doing that. And I think, you know, Nisha does that in a really beautiful way, I think, because it comes from a place of deep love and care for Sophie. It doesn't come from a place of just wanting her to. I think we all. It also shows the experience of when you are someone who loves someone who is grieving and going through something terrible. You just want them to be okay, and that comes from a place of love and care. And the person grieving knows that. But by wanting them to be okay, you're telling them that they can't grieve, and their grief is their love, and their love is the way that they are staying connected to the person that they've lost. And by telling them not to grieve and that they want you to be okay and to just get better, you're sort of telling them to let go of this person entirely and pretend that this like traumatic, tragic, awful, terrible thing has happened, when all they want to do is cling to that person and cling to that grief because it is the thing that is holding them up as much as it's breaking them, you know, and to be able to then hold on for long enough to be able to let go gently while still holding on, you know. And that's the journey of how do I hold on to this person, how do I honor this person in my life going forward whilst allowing myself to live on, you know. And I think, having someone like Nisha who so desperately wants Sophie to just come on, girl, come on, you can do this, you can get back to work, you can get back to the person that you were before, you can be you again. And God, I'm going through some stuff, but I can't tell you about it at the moment because you're going through this huge thing and I know that I can't share, but now I feel silenced and I don't know what to do about that. And so I'm going to drift away a bit, but then I want to fight for this. I want to fight for this friendship. You know, that to me is the kind of messy rawness of human relationships. We're not all brilliant friends all the time. We don't always show up for people when we should show up. We don't know what to say. We don't have the answers, but Nisha isn't afraid to say, oh my God, I've said the wrong thing. I don't know what, you know, but this is what I want. And this is what I think you should do. And maybe that's wrong, but I'm going to tell you because I love you. And I hope you would do the same for me. And I think they are the people that we need in our life. And to not be afraid of getting it wrong because you're trying and it is a way of showing up, you know, and showing that sort of fallibility of the human relationships. So I have a lot of love for Nisha.
And also, I think, you know, the way you talk about Nisha, it just shows to people listening that there's no one prescribed way in which to show up for someone. You can show up in so many different ways. And you shouldn't really be hard on yourself if you're like, oh, maybe I haven't been there every single day or made a phone call. Because that could be that one moment, that one random Tuesday afternoon that you do make the call, you send a text. Or you just send, you know, I know they like prawn cocktail crisps. I'm going to send them a bag of prawn cocktail crisps.
It's definitely the little things. And knowing that if they don't respond, it doesn't mean that they are not hugely grateful. They just can't right now. And it's not about you. And it's not. And maybe if you do say something wrong, try again. It's okay. Because none of us have been sort of taught how to do it. We haven't been taught how to grieve. You know, I didn't know what to say, or how to tell people, or how to share. Sophie doesn't know how to do that. She is utterly silenced by her grief and, you know, and is trying to find, and it takes time for her to find her language and her voice around it. So we're all just muddling through, right? But you can only muddle through when you're with someone. You can't muddle through when you keep away from them.
No, that's true.
And by keeping away, that friendship will be altered forever. It will, because, you know, the person comes through on the other side, a changed person entirely, and you haven't seen that metamorphosis and you haven't been on that journey, and then there's this sort of awkward separation, isn't it? And you just, showing up does just mean showing up. A little text, how are you today? You know,
do you need milk?
Sending something in the post. Do you need, can I take the dog for a walk? You know, anything, you know. I just, it's the little things. It's not saying how are you and wanting them to say I'm fine.
You
know, we know that now. It's about the extra. It's the extra question. I'm thinking of your baby today. You know, I've lit a candle, sending a candle in the post with the initial of the baby, you know, like, or the person they've lost, or finding a quote that seems really meaningful that you can send them, you know, like, it doesn't have to be your words. There are other people out there if you want to find out how to talk to someone about grief, there are so many ways that you can do that on the internet now. There are so many people writing about it, and there are so many people sharing really beautiful ways that you can do so. You don't have to have no language. There isn't really an excuse anymore, and if you get it wrong, it's okay.
It's okay to get it wrong.
The person, but then educate, or then go, okay, I think maybe I could try something else, or I haven't heard from them in 2 weeks, like I'm going to try again. And it's okay that they haven't got back to me, and I'm not going to get offended. And yes, I dropped a lasagna around 2 weeks ago and they didn't say thank you. No, because that was a gift, and the gift doesn't require a thank you, because if you require a thank you, then you are doing it for yourself. You're doing it to be a good person, and because you want to be a part.
Out of the way.
Exactly. It isn't about you're not just doing it, so that's all of that is in the book, it's there isn't a judgment. There's no judgment on anyone. It's just like, come on, let's all learn how to talk about this. Let's all learn together and be willing to go through the difficult bit, to have the privilege of seeing the beauty and having these conversations and having these moments where we're like, oh my God, and being able to support people, because that is what life is about at the end of the day,
I think so. And what I was just thinking just now is just that I'm pretty sure that there'll be at least one person listening to us, and they might ignore 50% of it, but there will be one moment and it'll resonate with them, and it may not, that message may not be for them, it might be for them to pass on to someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what conversations and books and art does, isn't it? And it's and everyone wants different things from it as well. And I completely also understand if people are going, well, that doesn't sound for me, I don't want to read that book. Like, that's fine. And maybe not now, and maybe in the future, or maybe never. Like, that's fine. I totally understand that too.
Right. So Ali, I'm going to go on to your last, even though I don't want to. I just want to chat to you. Yes, I want to talk to you forever. But I'm going to your last final set of questions. So the final questions are you an introvert or extrovert, or a hybrid of the two?
Definitely a hybrid of the two. I am extroverted, and I can absolutely put that on, but I also love my own company, and have been able to be a hermit for a long time as well, and say no to the nights out, and to not love big group situations. And I think anyone that's an author and a writer and grew up with their nose in a book constantly definitely has the introverted quality side of them, because you live so much in your own head. And that's,
my God, you do.
And so I definitely learned how to be more extroverted because I chose to do drama as a degree, and then went into magazine journalism, where it's very front facing, and you're having to learn how to talk to people. I love talking to people, and I think you can still be an introvert and love talking to people. But I sort of have no filter, as you learned quite quickly. And I like deep connection. I'm not very good at small talk. That's where I really struggle.
I can't do the superficial stuff.
No, I just want to get in there and talk about the big, deep stuff, and still laugh through it, and still have fun, like, not in a super serious way all the time, but I want to connect with someone else, and I want to sort of know their heart and know the person they are. I'm sort of not interested in the superficial bit of it. And so I find that quite awkward. I think I'm quite awkward in those situations.
But you can tell, I think it's when you can pick up on it, because you can pick up on the inauthenticity of it all.
Yeah.
And that's probably make people feel like, now I just want to go away. Let me just go back home, get up with my book, Netflix.
Exactly. Are you an introverted, extroverted? Person too?
I can do I know I can. I can do it outside, be out there, be full on. And then there are moments like, not even moments, like, I'm done. I'm done.
Do you find you have to pull that out of yourself though? Because I feel like I have to pull it out, and then I'm kind of exhausted afterwards. So I do think the introvert probably is the dominant, but I can put on my big girl pants and put on the glitzy sequin all in one. I don't own one of those. It's like a metaphorical glittery sequin.
Metaphorical
to kind of put on the show, but then I have to go away and hibernate again, because that has kind of, I don't think that's the real me, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like,
no, it does. I've always said I have to psych myself up for something. That's what I have to do. I have to psych myself up, and it's not a psych myself up an hour before. It's something I've had to be doing like throughout the day to get me through the moment.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, now I'm ready.
Yeah.
So that's
really interesting. Yeah.
Strange thing. So right, I normally ask like what challenge or experience shaped you the most, but I was going to ask you, because you said it took you 10 years, you didn't write for 10 years, and now you've written your new book. So my question is, what's next for you, Ali? Are you going to write another? Are you
Yes, I
writing
am.
another?
Yeah, I am writing another. I've sort of started in the research bit. I'm sort of taking it gently. It's taken a little while because this book was obviously has been a long, slow, gentle journey that was sort of obviously very emotionally hard to write. But by writing it, I felt transformed by the experience of writing a book like this. And I don't know how I go back to writing a book where I don't feel as sort of emotionally connected to something. So I wanted to wait for a story that I wanted to write so much that I needed to write in the same way that I needed this, or in a different way. But, you know, so it's taken a bit of time to find that story, but I didn't want to just go, well, now I'm going to write another book and now I'm back to writing books. I think for me, I've learned enough about myself to know that my best writing comes when I am telling something really truthful and in an authentic way that is driven by a deep need to write it, rather than, I've got to write another book this year.
Yeah.
So I am taking my time with it, and it is something that I feel connected to. So I'm hopeful, but I'm also not very fast, so it could be another 3 years before we have another chat.
But also,
I'm not promising anything.
I think it also shows the importance of being gentle with yourself, but how you can be gentle with yourself in so many different ways. It may not mean, you know, go make sure you're going to have a massage and a spa day every other month, but being gentle with how you approach your work and your projects.
And giving time and space to it, you know, going, I need to feel my way into this. I'm not just going to go, well, I'm going to have the first draft written in the next 6 months. It's like, I want to research it. I want to go to the place where it's set. I want to read a lot of books about this and sort of live it in a way that I can live it before writing it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it does.
That's where I am with it, really. Yeah.
Okay. So my next question is, if you could go back to when you were 25 years old and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
It would be keep dreaming, keep being authentic, keep being you, and trust your instincts, and you know best. And sort of, keep being driven by what's in your heart rather than what other people's expectations are of you.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of where the happiness comes. That's where, you know who you are, and you know what you want, and you know what you can cope with and what you can't cope with, and you're stronger than you think.
I mean, that's good advice for 25 years old. Right. And what is your non-writing tip for writers? I always say it could be go for a walk, drink water, have good lighting.
Yeah. Getting out and about and listening to people, obviously. I mean, it is always getting out in nature. I think that is the thing. I used to be the person that just thought that I could only write if I was sat at my desk, that was working. And it's taken me quite a long time to feel that working can take the form of doing other things that kind of feed your brain in a way that produces ideas, that isn't sat in front of a screen and trying to force words out. So I definitely, when I was in the middle of all my book contracts all those years ago, the absolute stress and anxiety I felt to deliver to those deadlines meant that I was at my desk all the time and I wasn't doing the other things that was then going to feed my brain to be able to have the dialogue, to be able to, you know, see the world in the way that I needed to see it in order to be able to, you know, write scenes and feed themes into the book. And I think I'm, having spent so long on this book and not writing to a deadline, it allowed me to understand that a walk in nature with the dog, you know, allowing my brain the space and time to work out the next bit of the book, or to see something in a certain way that I think I would need to describe that. That's a really important moment. Like those, that's where the sort of real beauty comes. I think that the hard graft has to be there too, you know, the kind of showing up and just powering through even when what feels like is coming out is rubbish, you know. But that's,
I think it's good advice.
Yeah.
And finally, Annie, where can listeners of the conversation find you online?
I'm on Instagram, Ali Harris Writer. I don't do X, Twitter. I don't do that. Came off that a long time ago.
Me too.
I'm scared. Don't go there. And I've got Substack actually,
I
which I
have you.
started.
I'm going to find you.
That was, I started it about 12 weeks ago. It's called, it's Ali Harris author, Substack, but it's called This Wasn't Meant to Happen. And it is very much about this particular book, also about my experience of having Poppy. There is kind of advice there on grief and surviving grief and books that help me, and, you know, my thoughts on the difference between grief and hope. And, you know, I'm going to have more and more stuff on there over the next few weeks. I'm writing a post weekly. It's completely free because I want it to be a place that anyone who reads this book and feels like they want something more, it's somewhere to land, this kind of safe place to land that I hope can sort of help in some way. Or for people who don't feel ready to read the book, there might be some who maybe have gone on an experience like Sophie's. I hope that sharing my experience and my experience of writing this book and my experience of having Poppy might be enough for them for the moment. So
I don't know what it is about Substack, but I mean, and I love Instagram. I just love posting. I mean, I just post random stuff. I love posting stuff, but I do feel like Instagram allows you to be more authentic in a completely different way. Maybe because you're I don't even know you're curating your social media, like your Instagram account. I don't know, but Substack just feels a lot more. There's a lot more control, and people are more responsive to what you have to say.
And I think I think for me, I realised that I needed somewhere where I could write long form. I've always struggled. I love Instagram, but I'm the person that writes, as you can tell from how I talk, write insanely long posts that, you know, over the years as the algorithms changed, like that.
I know. I'm like,
but I'm still doing it because that's who I am. So I'm still writing to the absolute character limit.
I know. I'm always like, how am I supposed to put this in X amount of?
I know.
It's not enough. And I love, and
so Substack's lovely for that because it, you know, and particularly around subjects like this, like it needs space. You need to be able to, you know, it's
there's
not
room
something
for room for your thoughts about it being confined between in a 4x3 grid and very minute writing that I can just about see now because my prescription on my glasses has changed. So
we've all been there. Start squinting at everything.
Oh my god, it's awful. Well, Ali, I hate to say goodbye. We have to say goodbye.
So it's been such a pleasure. What a lovely chat. What a lovely conversation.
It has.
Really, really enjoyed it.
So I have to formally say, Ali Harris, thank you so much for being part of the conversation.
Thank you for having me.